I'm delighted to invite Rachel Gerlis. She's an Elsevier Senior Acquisition Editor, and Miguel Sanchez, which is a solution manager, ebook solution manager, again for Elsevier. They are going to talk about Elsevier publishing strategy and how, as a publisher, they are trying to better understand the user's needs. They are also going to talk about the overall book publishing process and how Elsevier, as one of the leading publishers in the world, can support authors in this. And the third part, which will occur after the break, of the presentation is going to focus on Elsevier brand new foundational content initiative. Again.
For your participation in this event, and I want to give special thanks to the Technion library for organizing this event. I'm quite excited to be surrounded by an audience to talk about books to authors. I think that this will be quite constructive also to clarify some, general lines about the Elsevier book strategy. I'm going to refer in general terms to the book strategy that is held in Elsevier, and then my colleague Rachel Gerlis will go into the specifics about the publishing process. Okay, we're going to talk first. Can you hear me well, I assume, right? Because, I'm not close to the microphone, but I think that you can hear me. Otherwise, just let me know. First, I'm going to refer to general facts about Elsevier. Then we will talk about the data-driven strategy that informs all the general lines that are followed with ebooks in particular, and also how we try to understand user needs and user behavior in the platform with the different resources that get used. Okay, some facts first about Elsevier. Of course, I think that everybody knows Elsevier. It's a global publisher, quite old, in the publishing industry. I would stress the fact towards books that we are globally getting projects around the world, because we are trying to determine what is important in global research and also responding to the different regions in the world. We have in the platform already about 35,000 titles for ebooks, and we are producing a rate of over 1,000 titles a year, which is quite an organic growth compared to what was happening only 10 years ago, or 5 years ago. We apply all the research management tools we also have to make an analysis of the market and try to determine what are the trends, the current trends in research and also in funding. So all our decisions are very much driven by the data and by the analysis of the data. And we always publish e-version first. And we are in the very near future, all the print will be on demand only. So it will be pretty much we're getting there. As Professor Kaplan said, everything's inside the phone now, and we are becoming purely getting now a rate of 60% of our business in electronic compared to 40% in print for books, meaning books all the time. What is this data-driven strategy we follow? First, we identify globally what are the research trends around the world, what are the research trends that are better funded as well, and what are the main concerns of the professionals and researchers. Then we try to balance this information with the tools we have as well, and we publish our book content according to these gaps we identify around the world as well. The third step would be turning all this information into solutions, into different book types, into different book products. And then finally, we try to also cooperate with libraries to try to determine what is the needs or what solutions we can offer tailored to them. I mentioned before about how do we identify these research trends and funding. We look, of course, at the areas that are better funded as well, that have more strength in research, and we match those areas with the subject matters that are stronger in our also portfolio and in our publishing trends. And the idea is, of course, moving all these areas to the right to try to become more in line, to be more aligned with the subjects that are big and growing as well. Of course, to do that, we have to eventually do some divestments of products that don't fall under the line of what we want to do, and we have to do also new acquisitions, new editorial acquisitions, to try to align all these products in the direction we want to. Second thing, how we publish after we have done this exercise of identifying how we determine what should be published. Of course, here we have different criteria to do so, but we look mainly at three factors to do so. One is the strength of certain areas around the world, and to determine, this is an example of organic chemistry. To analyze that, we look at the impact of this particular subject area in the research and in the different institutions around the world, and also what is the production of articles in the same area, the research output. Combining both things, we define if a subject area is strong enough and what are the expectations we can have from it. And also the search trends. I mean, the frequent search terms that researchers use, we try to analyze all this data and see what are the subtopics that inside this example I was meaning before, organic chemistry, what are the subtopics that are more interesting for research? What are the subtopics where researchers are trying to move to? And this is what is very important to determine as well, what kind of specific titles we should publish, what kind of specific subtopics we should cover in our editorial process. And of course, that is very important. What are the most influential institutions around the world? And what are the most influential authors as well? Of course, with some tools we also have, such as Scopus, we analyze very much what are the most important authors around the world for that. In the past, the editorial strategy was just waiting until one author submitted a manuscript, and then, of course, the publishing company used to talk to him, to align, and try to refine that project. Now, it is more proactive on the publishing side. I mean, publishers we are looking actively for authors in certain subject areas, and of course, I mean, we are absolutely trying to get in line with the most influential institutions as well. And then how we put all this content together, how does this translate into actual products in books? Of course, there are different products in books that all the publishers publish in. It depends on what is the role of the actual product type. We have the encyclopedias, the major reference works, which is more such foundational content to establish bridges between different disciplines as well, and to try to get the best bibliography, what are the authors that should be read for that, what are the titles that should be important for a certain topic. We have also the reference modules, which is is the same product as the encyclopedias, but it gets more to the point. It's a step further because it's a product that is more digital. We have, of course, a product which is more methodological, the book series, more closer to the journals, let's say. And we have the actual ebooks, which are, of course, complete reviews of a topic and go in deep inside of on the topic that we are talking about. And of course, there are the journals which cover the primary research, and it's what I mean. All these other resources combined with. What is the evolution of the publishing process? Of course, I mean, according to everything what I was mentioning before, I mean, this is how the editorial portfolio is progressing in Elsevier. You will see that there are key differences in certain subject areas where we are publishing less or more, depending on all these analyses I've been referring to. And also you can see the organic growth driven by natural growth of our list and also by key acquisitions. This is all about, has to lead us to some solutions as well, and to some analysis about what are the users' behavior, what are the users' need towards the platform. Of course, the platform Science Direct is trying to progressively integrate all kind of resources in one point for research. I mean, and now it's not that important when a researcher is having a session and is doing his work. It's not that important to know what are the kind of resources they are going to use. It is more important that these resources are integrated and they can move with a lot of flexibility from one to the other. Journal content and book content all together in the same platform. What does this mean? I mean, it is both resources have a different role in research, as you well know. I mean, while journals go deep to the point and cover the basic or the primary research and the latest techniques, etc., books have to put all this information in context. Books are an account of all this information. How does this information relate to other areas, for example? How does this information relate to the history behind it? I mean, it's been what has happened in the past with that topic that we are covering. Books are accounts, are kind of narratives about the information that we found in journals. So we have to put them, both things together, and it's important that we define that both resources are covering different aspects of the research workflow. Books are giving a wider angle on topics. They are connecting things with creating analogies between different aspects. This is very important, and this is why we are analyzing what is the behavior of the researchers when they are working with the platform. Of course, there is another important element as well. Research is becoming more cooperative nowadays. There is more interdisciplinary research between different subject areas. There is more international participation as well with different authors, with different institutions around the world. And this is clearly a trend that we think it helps also to connect different resources together in the platform. Why are books needed for research? Of course, I mean, there may be many reasons, but one of them, of course, is understand what the journal is talking about, understand the concepts. What has this to do with other things? Another thing is, of course, researchers sometimes have to move to collateral areas, which are not their primary area of expertise, and then they have to refresh as well about new concepts and about new fields that are going to be relevant for the research workflow. And also, I was mentioning that before, this foundational information is meant to support the bridges between other disciplines, the nature of interdisciplinarity in research. We are also seeing, connected with this idea of that users are are just working in the platform, having a session in the platform, and are using different resources without paying much attention to what it is. They don't mind about that. I mean, they want to have everything together there. But we see how the different resources are used together. And this is a global analysis of how books and journals are used together. Because you can see that the bigger the circle is, there is more co-usage sessions between books and journals. This is something very interesting because, of course, it varies from area to area, and it depends also on the quantity and on the quality of the research that is being done. In many cases, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, if it starts from books and gets to journals or the other way around, but both resources are being used together more increasingly nowadays than in the past as well. For example, one of the encyclopedias that we have about social and behavioral sciences, you can see in the diagram in the middle of the slide how the different references are mentioned in this reference work. I mean, all these subject areas that you see listed there have, and of course for many publishers, it's not only about Elsevier, it's about all the publishers that you see there. I mean, we can see how, I mean, all the chapters are referring to additional bibliography, to additional sources. This is important because then, when the users are using this same title, they are also using some journal categories together. And this is how we see. For this same title, this is the co-usage analysis that was done, that is being done globally whenever a researcher uses this title. And of course, last but not least, I mean, books are very meaningful for teaching and learning. And this is very important because it's the way that knowledge is transmitted from one side to the other. Books are not just information, books are knowledge. And this is why they play also a key role in teaching and learning. And we can see there, because even in different formats, be print or e, that books are the most valued resource for the teaching process. I just wanted to give general lines about how we are combining different readings of the data as well, to see how researchers are using one resource, the other resource, how it's evolving the behavior, and how is all the challenges that we have ahead. But of course, this is a growing area, ebooks, and I think that in the future, I mean, more and more it will happen that libraries are not just about books. I mean, they will contain many, many kinds of resources. Okay, thank you very much for your attention, and I now leave my colleague Rachel Gerlis to continue with the presentation and go into the specifics of book publishing. Thank you.
Okay, so welcome to our author workshop. This is the agenda. So I'm going to cover our book publishing strategy and how we use data to inform that and our decisions. Then I'll talk about why you should write a book, the overall book publishing process. Then I'm going to touch on why you should write for a journal, because it's always useful, but this is mainly about books. And then I'll cover publishing ethics and plagiarism, and that's for books and journals. So just a little bit about me. I'm a senior acquisitions editor at Elsevier, and I work on our food science and chemistry and chemical engineering portfolios. I cover major reference works rather than books, but I've worked in the publishing industry for 6 years. So I've worked on journals, books, and more recently on the MLWs. And for those of you who aren't familiar with our MLWs, these are mainly encyclopedias and comprehensives. They're multi-volume works. They're aimed at practitioners and specialists from undergraduate level and above to give a primer. So for people that are maybe new to a subject area and need to get up to speed quickly, this is a starting point before you delve deeper into more specific books and journals. And here are some of Elsevier's imprints. We've grown mainly through acquisition. So we recently welcomed Woodhead and Chandos in 2013. Some of the ones that might be more relevant for you are Academic Press, which is our main scientific imprint that's been going for over 70 years now. Butterworth Heinemann, which covers applied science and technology. GPP, which does technical and business publications for oil, gas and the chemical industries. And Woodhead, which publishes a whole range of reference books in things like material science, maths, textiles, and food science and energy as well. So there are many different needs for content. We basically view books as the knowledge repository from which we learn, and they're the starting point for your research. So first we have our major reference works, which, as I mentioned, provide you with that primer, the foundational knowledge to a subject area. And then you'll move up into textbooks, which offer more of an educational examination of the area. And then handbooks will offer you the methods and processes you need on the job. So maybe things like data sets, recommended methods, processes, things like that. Further up the pyramid, we have slightly deeper knowledge, so monographs and single volume references, and they offer detailed description in slightly narrower subject areas. And then in grey we have the serials, which are kind of a hybrid of books and journals because they publish more than one volume a year, but in hard copy and ebook form. But they're a lot more detailed than our monographs and single volume references. And finally, journal review articles and journal articles, which give you that primary resource and a much more in-depth view of the field as well. So here are just some examples of those books. So you can see they all cover membranes, but all in slightly different ways for slightly different audiences. If you have a look at them in print or online, they're all laid out differently to appeal to different audiences as well. So our book series and MRWs. And then finally we have reference modules, which Miguel touched on. Now these are a fairly new initiative from Elsevier. They're online only, and they include all of our MRW content in each discipline. So each one contains thousands of articles, and it has its own editorial board. And those editors also commission exclusive content for the module, which can be published in the space of 2 or 3 months instead of the 2 or 3 years that it currently takes us to publish a whole encyclopedia with 500 chapters. And the board also keep the articles up to date. So if they see that there's been new developments in a field, they'll go back to the original author and ask them to update their article, which means it's perpetually relevant, it's always going to be citable. So it's just another option for you to publish in, or maybe to consider when you're doing your research as a starting point for a new topic. Okay, so now I'm going to come on to our strategy and how we decide what books to publish. In brief, this is our overall process. So we use our tools, things like Scopus and SciVal and Science Direct, to gather data. And then the editorial team look at their individual portfolio to see where there are gaps in the content and identify new areas for development by mapping the stats onto what we've already got. And this feeds into our annual publishing strategy, where each acquisition editor comes up with kind of a hit list for next year of what they want to publish. And the result is hopefully high demand content that really fills the gaps in our knowledge and your knowledge as well. So you can see here, using tools like Scopus, we can see overall what Israel is publishing, how many citations it's getting, how many authors it has, how many publications it's producing every year, and this helps us decide whether it's the right country to look for an author in a specific area. But then we have to map that against data like this. So you can see here, hopefully it's clear to everyone at the back, but Israel is 35th in terms of the number of publications that it produces in a subject like general engineering. However, it has a higher field-weighted citation than China, which is number 1. So actually the research that Israel is producing, even though there's less of it, it's more impactful. So as an acquisition editor, I have to look carefully at the data to make sure that everything adds up.
Are those based on books or journal articles?
Everything. So that's everything that's ever been published, yeah. And here you can see how your research output has grown over the last few years, which is great to see, and there's a really big spike in the early 2000s as well. And then this is how Technion breaks down into subject area. So again, if I was publishing something in medicine, mathematics, things like physics, it would be a great institution to come to because there's so much output happening here. And that also it's produced a huge number of citations as well, which is excellent. And this is the level of collaboration between authors here and in other institutions. It's really good to see a high international level of collaboration. This goes back to the interdisciplinary nature of research these days. Everyone's working outside their field, they're working with scholars all over the world and sharing knowledge really widely. So now I'm going to come on to why you should write a book. We surveyed about 200 of our book authors recently, and these are the top 4 reasons that authors write according to the results of that survey. So, firstly, for a reputation, so that they can be considered the leader in that field. They have a real interest and passion for the subject area. They want to provide materials to support their own courses, or because they've seen that there's a market need for it, and it's something that researchers really need to fill that gap in the literature. And we have several roles available across our book programme. So there's a book editor, a book chapter author, and a book author. So I'll talk through all 3. Firstly, the book editor. They are a well-connected, very well-respected figure in academic publishing or corporate R&D. We also work with a lot of industry practitioners as well. And their role is mainly to plan the scope of the book, to select chapter authors, which is why they need to be very well connected. They will then work with the authors to determine the scope of the chapters and then review the draft chapters at proof stage and help to coordinate the scientific aspect of the book. So things like quality control, making sure chapters aren't too diverse in their writing style, making sure there's no overlap between chapters. And then they'll work with our in-house staff to produce a high-quality end product. And they receive a royalty of the sales of the book. And then we have the chapter author. Now, these are experts from the academic and corporate communities, and they'll work underneath the editor to plan the coverage for their individual chapters. They'll write about 7,000 to 10,000 words in about 6 months, but that varies depending on the book and the subject area as well. It will cover well-referenced review content, it will explain the science, it will explain how to apply it, and the target audience is broad but fairly advanced, so academic researchers, corporate R&D, and advanced students, and they'll have an interdisciplinary focus, so hopefully readers from all kinds of backgrounds will be able to understand what's been written in that book, and there's no payment involved for the chapter authors. And then the book author will write the whole book themselves, so this is a huge task, but you get all the credit at the end, which is great. So again, acknowledged experts, their job will be to identify a really strong market need in terms of the subject matter and the audience. There has to be a gap in the market for this book. And they'll write about 100,000 words in around a year. Again, well-referenced, very detailed, perhaps a more clearly defined target audience in this case. The book might be much narrower in scope. But it will still be interdisciplinary, and again, the author will receive a royalty of sales. So I'm next going to come on to our book's publishing process and what actually happens. This is the overview of the process. So the acquisition editors start by building their lists for the year ahead, and then decide what books to publish, and then using the stats that I showed you earlier, we'll go out and find the right people to write the books. So that's why we attend a lot of conferences, we visit a lot of universities to try and meet the right people, But we also accept unsolicited proposals. So if you have a great idea, we're always willing to hear it, and we will still evaluate it carefully if it fits into our field. And these are the critical elements that you'll be asked for if you do submit a book proposal. Hopefully we'll be able to circulate the slides afterwards, and there's a link to the form so you can have a look and download it yourself. The main thing that we're going to look at is the title. That'll be the first thing we see. So it's really important to have a very clear working title. The information in this proposal will also end up being used in our marketing throughout the process. So it's important that you have as much information in the proposal as possible, even if you find that it changes while you're actually writing it. As long as you keep us informed, then we can make sure it's in our marketing and sales material as well. So to make an effective title, you have to ensure that it will attract the reader's attention without being too catchy or chatty. Make sure it's concise and informative, and that it directly reflects what's actually in the manuscript. Don't include any technical jargon or abbreviations that the reader might not understand. And editors and reviewers don't like titles that don't actually make sense. So you have to make sure that, even though it might make sense to you, maybe check with your colleagues and supervisors that it will be easily understood by others in the field. And just remember that you want the right audience to read your book. So by having a good title, by making sure your proposal is really clear and provides a lot of information, means it will reach the right audience and hopefully get the citations that it deserves. So to make sure that your proposal is accepted, you have to be able to demonstrate a really clear market need. There has to be a gap in the market for this book. If there's a lot of books already published in the field, we might not necessarily accept it because that market is saturated. We also need to know that there's a clear audience. A lot of people just write students or lecturers when we need to know what level of students, what field, how narrow is that field, how big is that field around the world. It can be a rough guess, but it's always useful for us to understand. There also has to be a really strong need for the book. If there isn't, no one will buy it. And then once your editor is happy with the proposal, they will send it out for review to experts in the field. This can take a couple of weeks, but the acquisition editor will then ask you to respond to the reviews. So we normally get around 10 to 20 reviews on each book. And not everyone is going to like your idea, but you have to be able to explain why you either disagree with them and give a good reason, or explain how you will take their feedback on board and restructure the proposal and revise it accordingly. So here is where you can download the book proposal form, and then there's also a link to the acquisition editor for your subject area to make sure you're submitting it to the right person. And yeah, always speak to your acquisitions editor throughout the process, because if you're unsure about anything, they can point you in the right direction. They have seen it all before, so they'll be able to answer your questions. So once your proposal has been accepted, you should try to write a manuscript that provides a clear and useful and novel message to the audience, and allows them to easily grasp the subject matter. And then once it's ready, it will be handed over to the production manager, who will liaise with you directly. They will give you a schedule, and they'll be able to answer any questions you have about things like permissions, where they can help you out. And they will start to copy edit, typeset, proofread, index, and finally manufacture your manuscript into a book and an ebook, working with our professional suppliers. You will then receive electronic proofs about 2 months after you've handed over your final manuscript. And we produce all of our books in hard copy and ebook form, as we mentioned earlier. Okay, so I'm going to very briefly touch on why you should write for a journal. It's always important to publish in books and journals, but this is mainly a books presentation, so I'll go through this quite quickly, but if you have questions, just shout. So again, the results of that survey showed us that People generally publish in journals because they want to be registered in the scientific community. It shows who publishes the results first, and it gives you that official timestamp. Journals also disseminate your research far and wide, and it preserves it for posterity, and it also helps with career advancement. So it can be very difficult to secure grants and promotions without having significant amounts of cited research. And this is our publishing cycle, and there are some big numbers on there. So we currently have around 10 million articles in our system. Depending on the journal, on average 30 to 60% of papers are rejected outright by one of our 7,000 editors, that we work with. And anything that's not rejected will undergo peer review. We have around 500,000 reviewers working with us at the moment. And then around half of these will get accepted after a minor or a major revision. So in the end, nearly 500,000 articles are accepted by editors each year and published by Elsevier. There are 9.8 million articles now available across all of our journals, and these have been downloaded over 480 million times by 30 million researchers across more than 180 countries around the world. So if you publish in a journal, people will definitely read it. It goes far and wide. And there are different types of journal manuscripts. So we have full articles, which are significant, complete pieces of research. Then there's letters and short communications, which are shorter and show the research at whatever stage it's at, not necessarily completed. And then there's review papers, which discuss the current literature but don't actually add anything to it. And these are normally invited by the editor-in-chief. So it's always good to establish what type of article yours is before submitting it, to make sure that you're submitting it to the right journal and that it will reach the right audience. So again, ask your colleagues, ask your acquisitions editor if you're not sure. And then once you've selected your article type, you will need to publish it in the right journal. Now to do this, you can use our journal finder tool. And all you do is put the title into the search box. You can also put the abstract and narrow it to your field of research. And it will bring up a list of related titles for you to choose which one sounds most like your subject area. It's important that you choose the right one, otherwise you are more likely to get rejected and your work won't actually reach the right people. So it's also important that you only submit to one journal at a time. You might be familiar with this, but it's against international ethics standards to submit to more than one journal, and editors do talk, and they do find. And a tip is to just look at the references in your own paper, because you might have referenced the same journal 2 or 3 times, and perhaps that's the natural path to your paper publishing. So any questions at this stage? No?
Yes.
Yes? Oh, sorry, yeah.
What are the terms of the contract?
For books or for journals? There's a lot.
In general, 5 topics.
I don't know off the top of my head. We've got, at the end, there's a link to we've got a publishing campus that gives you more information about publishing with Elsevier. I think on there there's sample contracts that you can look at. But your acquisition editor will be able to talk you through that once they've seen the proposal. They can discuss that, and it's always open for discussion. If there's terms that you disagree with or that you want edited, we can always talk about that. Yes.
So I just finished publishing a book with Springer. It came out about 4 months ago, and I realized it's obviously a different publisher, but it was a very disappointing and disturbing process. One of the problems was the terms of the contract, so that's an excellent question. What services does Elsevier offer? For example, indexing. What kind of indexing? Is it just that's a huge expense. An author has to take on the expense of doing the indexing. Is that something that's offered in the contract?
As far as I know, yes. Yeah. I don't know if it's
What
offered
kind
as
of indexing? I mean, is it like, what ended up happening in my book was it was the index of the authors, all the authors, basically the authors that and the keywords, and that was it.
Okay. I work on MRWs rather than actual single volume books. So for MRWs, I know we cover the whole index ourselves. For books, I'm not sure if it's standard to do it, but I think it's something that we can offer. But I'd need to go away and ask. But I can let you know.
Another question?
But grammar, spelling, punctuation, we take care of all of that quality control side of things. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to go through publishing ethics and plagiarism next. This is fairly similar to books and journals. If you follow these tips, you shouldn't ever have a problem, but they can be confusing and it can be a grey area legally. So always ask your acquisitions editor if you're not sure, and they'll be happy to help you, or the project manager, depending on what stage of the process you're at. So make sure that you report only real and unfabricated data. Make sure that you acknowledge and cite all third-party sources and that you apply for permission to reuse anything that's not yours. Cite all of your sources. Declare any conflicts of interest, so things like financial, intellectual, any personal beliefs. And again, always submit to one publisher at a time. And this can be different for book publishing, but for journal, always submit to one journal at a time.
What about a book proposal? Can you send? Is it acceptable to send to more than one publisher at a time?
Yes. Yes. You just can't have it accepted by more than one. And this is a definition of plagiarism. And the main thing to remember is that anything can be plagiarised. If it's not yours, you have to ask for permission to reuse it. If you're not sure who owns copyright, ask your acquisition editor, ask your product manager. We do this all the time. We can help you with that. We have a whole permissions department who can take on your permissions for you for your book. As long as you let them know early in the process that you'd like them to do that, it gives us the time to do that for you. And it can be confusing. So if you have any questions, just talk to Elsevier and we can help you with that. And we use an online tool called Crosscheck, which includes thousands of articles from various different journals, books. I think this is just journals, but it's from publishers all around the world. And it brings up similarities in papers. So if you've copied huge chunks of text or images, we'll be made aware of that. So to avoid plagiarism, yes?
Oh, I didn't want to interrupt you in the middle there, but you related to the, again, going back to the contract, to the terms of the contract, is copyright, help getting copyrights, is that also part of the...
Yes, so things like permissions.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
So that's something that Elsevier helps with?
Yes, yeah. We have a permissions department who can do that for you and work with you to do that. Yeah. So always make sure that you cite things accurately and fully. These citations have to also include your own papers, otherwise that could count as self-plagiarism. Acknowledge all your sources, and remember that Wikipedia and other free things on the internet are also copyrighted, and you have to have permission for them. And again, ask your AE if you have any questions or if you're not sure about anything. So this is our publishing campus, and this has more information about everything I've talked about today. So if you're unsure about anything, hopefully you can find something on there to help you. It gives you advice on things like ethics and copyright, and how to develop your proposal in more detail. And these are just some helpful links as well. So the overview of the books process, a link to COPE, which is the official publishing ethics committee that all publishers have to abide by, and Mendeley, which is our social network for academics, where you can ask other academics questions and bounce ideas off each other as well. And then these are the emails for our publishers. So every acquisitions editor works under a publisher who are responsible for the wider discipline. So if you're not sure exactly where your proposal sits, feel free to email them to ask, and they can point you in the right direction as well. And that's it. So are there any more questions?
Can you just return
Yes.
back to the previous? Yeah.
Yeah. Any questions? Nope. All right. Thank you.
How is that done, and who makes the final decision?
So the publisher makes the final decision on that, and it will depend on competitive titles, what the market looks like, how long the book is. We produce all the financials at the time that the book is approved, so you should hopefully be told the price point fairly early on in the process.
Does the author have any input into that?
Generally not, because it's more of an internal decision. Yeah. Yes.
Would it be possible for us to have the relevant slides with the links?
Yes, I think we can
Yes,
circulate them.
the presentation and will be available in the Technion YouTube channel. So you're going to be able to see Rachel and the slides themselves. So, and we will publish it, and we'll let you know as soon as it will be available. So we're going to take a 15 minutes break. Okay, so before the third and last part, we are going to take a 15-minute break.
This is our brand new research reference initiative. It's something that we're looking at producing in the next year or so, and we'd really like to get your input on this. So we know that ebooks are critical to complement journal content. That's something we've already discussed. Users flow seamlessly between books and journals. They don't care whether it's a book or a journal, they just want the information. And our current platform disrupts this natural link. So hopefully the new research reference initiative will address this issue and drive better outcomes for you as researchers and authors. We're looking to a future that supports your needs. So Miguel showed you this slide earlier. Basically, books and journals complement each other. They both solve different problems. Researchers and students tell us that they need books and journals to do their work, especially in an increasingly multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary environment. And books provide that foundational knowledge that we mentioned earlier, and journals build on that into more specific, in-depth knowledge. And these are the user cases that you saw earlier. Ultimately, authors and users want to understand an article immediately. They want information at their fingertips, they want it right now, regardless of where they are in their workflow, and they need to support their interdisciplinary research. The problem is that the way that our platform, Science Direct, which is where we host all of our content, the way that it hosts content at the moment, it asks our users to pick and choose whether they want a book or a journal or a reference work. So you can see here, you're asked to select what you want, when actually what you want is information. You don't care where it's come from. We know that many users flip between the two, but that's quite laborious when you're in a hurry and you need information now. So we know that as researchers, you need to perform many different tasks every single day. You need to keep up to date in your field, you need to keep up to date in related fields, you need to keep up to date with developments going on all around the world. And the solution that we're working on is to deliver content that suits your needs at the exact point in your research. So when you're looking for a definition, you immediately find that definition. When you're looking for the very fundamentals to your subject area, you have that information. And we need things like methods and processes. You can just quickly click into those methods and processes. And hopefully it will address your needs at the right point in your workflow. So here, the user need is that you want to understand an article. So you're online, you're reading a journal article, and you hit a concept that you're unfamiliar with. So that word in yellow right in the middle there, if you can see it. We're working on a solution that will hyperlink this concept to another page that will hopefully provide you with more information on that concept. So that information will be pulled from books, from journals, from reference works, but it will ultimately all be in one place, like this. And then what we want to do eventually is add other content. So first we'll give you a definition, then we'll give you the fundamentals, then we'll give you methods and processes, and then eventually we want to add more things in there for you. So things like the chemical structure of this term, the latest research surrounding it, its reactive properties, any legal considerations, hazards, handling requirements, toxicity, and data tables, things like that. And hopefully in the end we can offer you those things in all different kinds of formats. So you'll be able to click through onto videos, spreadsheets, audio files. And this is what it should look like in the end. Now this is still in user testing, but you'll see on the left you just have the article on Science Direct with a key term. And you click on that term and it would take you to a more advanced landing page. And on that page you've got the definition, related terms, so you can click into other journal articles or book content or wherever it might take you. And then learn more on the topic. So there's related reading, the latest articles surrounding that key term. And we're trying to focus on delivering things like definitions and fundamentals for you, so you have them immediately. And the benefits of this to the end user are that you get quick and targeted answers when you need them. You know that they're authoritative, they've come from other Science Direct journals and books. It's not like you just type something into Wikipedia. It surfaces the results that a search engine wouldn't, so hopefully it will increase serendipitous discovery. And it supports your workflow and those use cases that we saw earlier about needing content immediately. And then for the author, it will increase the demand and profile of your article or your book chapter. More people are likely to visit it. If it's on a landing page, they'll be jumping around from different chapters and different articles. It will have greater relevance because it links to a wider context if it has its own landing page. And it will help you focus your commissioning and writing, so ensuring that it fills that need in the community. And then for universities and librarians, hopefully it will give them a clearer understanding of their teaching and content needs, because we can gather the data that's been used. So if we can see that a lot of people are clicking on specific words and they're looking for the methods of that word, we know that there's a gap there and that perhaps we could publish a book containing the methods of that term. So hopefully it will provide them with a greater return on investment and support their research goals as well. So to take this forward, we'd really like your input. So in front of you, you should all have a sheet of paper with these terms on it. And we want to know what's most important to you at your stage of career. So if you could just think about what you do day to day when you're looking at content, browsing, jumping from books to journals, different articles, what types of questions are you most frequently asking? What are you looking for normally? Is it the methods and processes? Is it things like legal considerations? And then hopefully number them 1 to, I think it's 14, in order of preference, and what you'd most like to see on a landing page in the future. And then if you're happy to, we'd also like to know your discipline and your role, and that helps us with our research to understand who needs what, basically. So ultimately, we're looking to develop solutions that are driven by your needs. The input that you provide today will help us identify the areas that are most important to you as users, and it will hopefully inform our ultimate product development and the way that that landing page will look in the end. And we've also got partnering opportunities as well. So we're always looking for people we can go to for feedback, to be involved in things like user testing. So if you're interested in any of that, please contact me. I've got business cards here at the front, or just email me at that address, and I'd be happy to hear from you. So any questions on that? Okay. Well, that's it from me then. But if you could fill out those sheets and then either leave them where you're sitting or hand them back to me, that'll be really good. And thank you for your time.
Server today. It's a very short one, so if you can take the time, it's only a few minutes, to complete it and send it back to us. Thank you again for coming, and hopefully we'll see you next time.